Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Wednesday, March 4th, 2020. I am Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. You'll notice here a very nice impulse move here. We got the big sell-off. We talked before that if we can get a strong low, we likely get a bounce right back to the top pink line here, and we got it. That's the midpoint of the previous month's sell-off, and what that does is that gives us a new key range that we can use. The boundaries are tremendous. We have the high, the midpoint, and the low. Great buying opportunities occur below this line. If price were to get below it and fail, it could be a move back up the range. Eventually, if we break through these boundaries, we either go 100% or 50 or 100% lower of the range, or we could go higher that amount. So we have a really good range here to work off of. In terms of how we're going to play out here today, we talked a couple of things here. Yesterday we talked about a failed high, perhaps leading to a pullback. And if we do get that pullback, a bounce off this zone could be a swing buying opportunity for bulls if this thing is going to head higher. Now keep in mind, right now we've seen a major sell-off through the 200-day, way through it. We've come back, we hit the midpoint, but look how price continues to hold below that 200. It continues to honor the lower value relationship of the pivot range. This pullback, if it can't hold above 30.50 or that 30.55 midpoint from yesterday's session, that could be an indication to sell this thing. If we break through 2-day lows, we could be looking at a retest of the recent low, if not lower. So this could be very interesting today. Keep an eye on 30.55 and 30.50. All right, let's take a look now at the NQ. All right, with the NQ here, you've seen similar price action. We've seen a big sell-off. We saw a bounce back to reach the midpoint, right? Sell-off, bounce back. We have ourselves a key range now, very similar to the ES. We've bounced off the level we mentioned yesterday that if we sold off from this high, we would come back to the blue dot. If we come back to the blue dot, it's likely a bounce. And that's what's happened now. However, we're now testing the previous session's midpoint. That's going to be a very important zone, right? That previous session's midpoint is right there, that dot. And again, that dot's very important because if you fail to hold it, that could be an indication we're headed lower. So that's 56.75. We're basically right below it at the moment. And you can also see lower value relationship with the pivot range. We're right in it. This could lead to a retest of the low very soon. Again, keep an eye on yesterday's midpoint as kind of an early litmus test for control here for the day. All right, let's take a look here at crude oil. Crude here. This one had a bit of a bounce from recent lows, very similar to the ES and the NQ, but again is dealing with overhead resistance in a couple of ways. A few ways, really. Here's the 49 break. Boom. That, I mentioned before, would lead us down to about 42.50. It got to 43.32, so not quite there just yet. It bounced and is now showing signs of perhaps forming a lower high below the breakdown point, which could lead to another round of weakness. Additionally, this pullback comes right into the PIMA trigger zone, right? The downtrending market PIMA trigger zone. It could get a little bit more in there, but that's typically an area to defend for bears as well. And lastly, you have the lower value relationship here. Here's the pivot range. Here's the pivot range last month. Here it was the month before when it failed on that relationship, bounce, and now we're back in it. Does this lead to a retest of the lows again? Above 49s would be significant if it can get through that zone, but right now watching for signs that perhaps this thing may roll down yet again. All right, let's take a look lastly at gold futures. You'll notice with gold, this one had a big rally here recently. It's bounced back pretty tremendously after the pullback we seen last week, Friday, with a major pullback and then a major rally. Again, as I mentioned before, this market remains extremely bullish. The market structure on a short and long-term basis remains intact. Staying above 1525 suggests a move to 1800 down the road, maybe as high as 1830 based off of this impulse range. So we have perhaps more upside ahead overall, but once you see an impulse move like this, there could be some range-bound action for a while first. This one tends to move in bunches. Big push up, sideways. Big push up, perhaps some sideways, followed by another continuation. So overall, we still remain bullish. We may see a bit of sideways action with an upward bias. All right, that is it for now. We'll see how this develops the rest of the session. Good luck, trade well, and I'll see you in the trading room. Take care.